So now we're starting in the book of Judges, which is so crazy. It's hard to believe, how fast time is passing, but we're in the book of Judges, and it is definitely not for the faint. There's a lot of graphics, some gory stories here of things happening. But nonetheless, Judges is the time after Joshua's leadership. The Israelites had so much success in conquering the land of Canaan for the most part under Joshua's leadership, and they worshiped God, and Joshua proved himself to be such a great leader. But he did not appoint someone, probably because, he moved into the leadership of God. So that's essentially, God didn't appoint any successor for Joshua. And I have to think that, they had Moses and then they had Joshua. If God had continued in that progression of the Israelites always having a leader, then that's what they would have relied on more than God, right? They would have, instead of seeking God for themselves, they would have relied on that more than relying on God. And so sometimes God will take things out of our lives on purpose for us to learn how to rely on him. And I was listening to a podcast lately, and I feel like sometimes we'll have, the person was saying in the podcast that they got something taken away in their life that they valued so much, and they didn't realize how much value that they put on it until God took it away. And so if you feel like, why, God, are you doing this to me? Why am I going through this trial? Or why is this, whatever it is, taken away, sometimes, and some things, of course, it's not everything, but sometimes we think we put things on a pedestal and we put it above God, and we need to remember that he is first. And so Israel had no successor. Joshua had no successor. Israel had no leader. They had to learn how to trust God for themselves. And the word judge is not like a law-abiding judge, like how we think of judge today, but rather the Hebrew word for that was shaphat, I saw online, which meant heroic leader. So the Lord brought up different heroic leaders throughout the time of Israel for them to, when they were in trouble. And you'll see Israel throughout the book of Judges. It is like a cycle. They turn away from God, worship other gods. They get into trouble. They say, God help us. God helps them. And then they go right back to the same thing, that lukewarm living. And we can't even fault the Israelites because we do that sometimes too, right? We can learn from them, though, to not do that. We shouldn't always call on God only when we're in trouble. We need to make sure that we are calling on God at all times, that we are continuously just seeking him. And so in verse 2 and 3, Judah was the largest and strongest tribe, and Judah and Simeon worked together, those two tribes, to defeat their enemies. And you'll read up until around verse 21, they conquered a few lands because there were pockets of Canaanites among Israel. And then in verse 21, the victory was theirs, but they didn't possess it. God had already given them victory over Canaan. He had already told them they would conquer it, but they didn't drive out their enemies completely like God told them to. And they ended up doing exactly what Moses and Joshua told them to not do, right? He said, completely get rid of, they have to drive out their enemies. They shouldn't accept their false gods and their false idols. And you'll read in the book of Judges that Israel does just that. It is just so wild to see what a rebellious nation they are. But truly that's humans, unfortunately. And, we are often making decisions that hurt God and go against God. And so when you read the book of Judges, look at Israel, but also I just reflect on times in my life where, hey, maybe I did this. And I try to make it an effort to not put any idols before me, to not be unwavering in my faith, to just be faithful to God just because he is God, not because of whatever circumstance I'm in, but just loving God just because he is God and wanting to serve him just because, not contingent on whatever he does for us, but just because I love God and I want to serve God. So yeah, so that was it pretty much for Judges chapter 1. I hope you join me for chapter 2 next week. Sorry I was gone last week. Got a little bit sick and I had to take a week off. So thank you so much for watching. I post a new video on Wednesdays and Fridays at 7 a.m. Eastern. And I can't wait to study the Bible with you again.